The Paul Leslie Hour, helping people tell their stories. And now, your host, Paul Leslie.
Hey, it's me. Hello and welcome to the Paul Leslie Hour. Thank you for tuning in. Before we get into the interview, I would be honored if you would consider going to thepaulleslie.com and clicking Support the Show. There are quite a number of things I want to accomplish with the Paul Leslie Hour, and you can help me get more of these interviews out there to the masses. It only takes a moment, and it makes a world of difference. Last but not least, tell someone about the Paul Leslie Hour. Let them know in whatever way you can. And now let's get into the interview. Hey, it's me.
Is that better?
This is great.
Okay.
We got a good connection.
Good.
Well, how are you doing, sir?
Doing good. Doing good.
That's good.
Beautiful day here in Oklahoma. For now. Tomorrow won't be.
It's not so bad out
Where
here.
Are you in Georgia? Where are you from?
Georgia. That's right.
Yeah.
A little windy.
Peach Street.
Yeah. We've got 1,000 Peachtree streets here.
Good deal.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to the man that you're hearing me talk to here. We're joined by a legendary fiddle player. His name is Byron Berline. He's with us now, and as a recording artist and performer, he's received great acclaim. His music has been heard on many film soundtracks and on television. In addition to his great recordings, which I recommend, as a sideman, he's recorded with a long list of people. Bob Dylan, the Rolling Stones, Willie Nelson, greats like Bill Monroe, Earl Scruggs, Doc Watson. You could just go on and on with the number of artists he's worked with, but we've got him here on the Paul Leslie Hour, so thank you so much for making the time to talk to us.
Oh, no problem, Paul. Glad to be with you. Talk about music, that's a good thing.
Oh, yeah. It's something I never get tired of.
Right.
So you call your home these days Oklahoma, but you were born in Kansas. Is that correct?
I was. My dad, his dad did the land run up in Oklahoma in 1893. My dad was born in 1894, and he was 50 when I was born. But our next town close to us was Caldwell, Kansas, across the line. And we lived right on the Kansas-Oklahoma line. And we lived on a farm in Oklahoma, but our address was Kansas. I know it's confusing, but both states claim me. Kansas claims I'm from Oklahoma, and Oklahoma claims I'm from Kansas. So there you go.
Well, it's nice to be fought over in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, right. But, it's so really, when people say, where were you born? I say Caldwell, Kansas, which I was, and then, but lived most of my life in Oklahoma, and I went to the University of Oklahoma, and then ended up here in Guthrie. It was my wife's hometown, Betty. It's her hometown, and so we moved back here in 1995.
Okay.
Been stationed here ever since, and I like it a lot.
Can you recall the kind of music that you heard when you were just a youngster growing up?
Well, I just listened to my dad play fiddle. He was an old-time fiddler, He played for all the barn dances and school gatherings and stuff like that, back in the day before electricity. And that's the only form of entertainment they had. So he knew a lot of old-time fiddle tunes and schottisches and polkas and waltzes and stuff. But every state had a different style back in those days. You used to be able to tell where a fiddler was from the way they played, just like an accent. You're from Oklahoma, you're from Texas, you're from North Carolina, you're Tennessee, whatever. They had their own way of playing in those states. And it was fairly closely related to the Texas style, I suppose. A little more of a long bow type approach, but that's what I grew up listening to. My dad and my mother played piano, and some of my other brothers and sisters played some instruments. And so we always had music in our home. My dad always wanted one of us to play the fiddle, so I guess I was the chosen one. I was the last one to come along with my family. I was the youngest of five. And so I don't remember ever not really playing the fiddle much. You know, I used to get between my dad's knees and he put the bow up, the fiddle up under my chin and grabbed the bow with my hand, you know, and act like I was playing. I thought that was a thrill. But I learned my first tune when I was 5 years old. Mississippi Sawyer is the name of it, and then Ragtime Annie, and on from there, you know. And my dad used to take me to fiddle contests around and stuff, and then different places. We'd play any place we could, pie suppers, PTA meetings, fairs, whatever. Just any place we get on stage and play. But bluegrass wasn't really, you didn't see much of it back in those days, you know. First band I saw was about 1958, bluegrass band in Kansas.
Do you remember which bluegrass band that was?
Yeah, it was Jack Theobald playing the guitar, and Buster Jenkins, or Frank Kennard is his real name, played fiddle and banjo, and then Kenny Plummer played the fiddle. And I just thought they were great, you know. And it was the first live band I'd ever seen. I can say that was 1958. I was about 13 years old or so, or 57, 58, somewhere in there.
Who would you say taught you the most about your instrument?
Oh, my dad, for sure. Yeah.
What kind of man was he? Tell us about him.
He was a farmer from German descent. You know, all the farmers came up from Germany. His dad was a farmer, so he was a farmer and raised purebred polled shorthorn cattle. And so, but he was you know, and like I say, he was older. He could have been my grandfather, and so a lot of people thought he was. And every time he'd take me around somewhere, "Oh, this is your grandkid?" I said, "No, it's my son." But we had a great relationship, and I just owe him a lot, you know, for getting me started on the fiddle and kind of straightened me out with bowing and this and that and the other. You know, he was helpful in that, and took me to contests around and where I met other fiddle players. Especially saw the Texas fiddle players and kind of opened my eyes a little bit, you know, because they were more embellished, more improvisational than what we were doing. And so then I got into bluegrass, just listening to it on the radio, listening to Bill Monroe and Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs on the radio. You know, we could pick up WSM here in Oklahoma. It was a 50,000 watt station we could hear at the Grand Ole Opry. Anybody had a fiddle in it, we'd like to listen to it. Roy Acuff, you know, of course, had Howdy Forster playing. Flatt and Scruggs had Paul Warren, of course, you know. I used to listen to Benny Martin on some of the radio and TV stations that we could pick up back then. So it was, then I just grabbed a whole every record I could find. And back then it was just Tommy Jackson, square dance tunes without calls. You know, he just played straight fiddle tunes on those. I had bought every one of those I could get. And then Howdy Forster had a couple albums out I listened to quite a bit. So it was, you know, you try to find any music you could wherever you could find it, and it wasn't very easy back in those days. The only way you could learn is to put a record on and play it, and then try to emulate that, and to learn tunes, you know. So it was there wasn't any video or anything like that those days. You know, cassette recorders even.
Yeah.
Till the '60s come around.
From all the fiddlers that you've heard, from WSM on the radio, from the records that you heard, from the times that you went and saw different fiddlers at these contests or wherever, who would you say the best fiddler you ever heard was?
Gosh, I'd hate to say that. They're all some of my favorites. You know what I mean? But I just can't say, oh, he's definitely the best. I mean, everybody's got something to offer.
Well, maybe tell us a few that come to mind.
Well, I mean, guys, you know, that I listened to, like I told you, Tommy Jackson I started listening to first, then Howdy Forster, of course, and then as I got into it, Benny Martin. I listened to Benny Martin because he was accessible to listen. He was on Ozark Jubilee doing Me and My Fiddle, and he would do different things. And I listened to him when he played with Flatt and Scruggs. I thought he was one of my favorite bluegrass fiddlers. And then Kenny Baker comes along, of course, played with Bill Monroe, and his playing was definitely, I liked a lot. And people like Vassar Clements, Bobby Hicks, those fiddlers, you know, became friends of mine. So I have to include those guys. So, and then Arthur Smith, fiddling Arthur Smith was sort of an influence also. Clark Kessinger, listened to him when I was a kid. Eck Robertson, of course, you got to put him in there. And I know I'm leaving somebody out as far as the pioneers of fiddling. You know, the Texas fiddlers, of course, was, you know, the Franklins, Major Franklin, the Solomons, and Benny Thomason, people like that were influence to me.
Now, one of the names that you mentioned, I'm sure a lot of people who pay attention to album liner notes, they know the name Vassar Clements. And you said you knew him. Could you tell us about him? Could you tell us what he was like?
Oh, he's a great guy. I really enjoyed that. He's from Florida kid. He's from Kissimmee, Florida. And we met when I went to Nashville and met him. And then we did some festivals together here and there, you know. And then we recorded with Red, White, Bluegrass together. We did twin fiddles on that. We always wanted to do a twin fiddle album together, but never did get it done. But he and I were good friends, I would say, and just a swell guy, just a sweetheart of a guy, and he never knew what he was going to play next, which I liked about him. He was just all over the place, you know, and he was such an interesting fiddle player. I mean, yeah, he was a lot of fun. All of them, all those guys were you know, I mean, I was really fortunate to be able to know all of them, from Eck Robertson to, you know, Arthur Smith, who wrote Blackberry Blossom and a bunch of tunes, Red Apple Rag, you know, stuff like that. Just, he was a big influence, and I got to know all those guys, and that was fun to be able to say I knew them.
Something that occurs to me is what a broad range of people can be fiddle players. The youngest guest we ever had on this show was 13 years old and a fiddle player, Maggie Estes. You know, I've seen fiddle players from Europe. I've seen gypsy fiddle players from Mexico. It's really an instrument that, you know, the fiddle is in so many different cultures around the world.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. It's amazing what that instrument does. It draws people together, you know. Regardless of what style you play, I always enjoy listening to whatever style they're playing. As long as they're playing that instrument. And people say, "What kind of music you like?" I said, "Good." You know, that's the kind I like.
Yeah, me too.
I don't care what it is. If it's good, I like it.
Would you say that fiddle players is kind of like an extended? I know there's men and women, so you couldn't say brotherhood, but it's almost like a family, isn't it?
Yeah, in a way, for sure. You can go to all parts of the world, you know, don't speak English or whatever, to speak the same language, but you can sit there and jam with them for hours, you know, and I've done that many times. Bluegrass and fiddle players, you know, and you just holler out the name of the tune, away you go. And usually, some of the Irish and Scottish fiddlers there, we changed the names of the tunes. You know, one time they got over here, the names of the tunes have been changed. And so, but it's the same tune, but it's a different name. You know, so.
Can you recall the first time you went into a recording studio?
Yes, I can. It was with the Dillards, 1964, July 5th or 6th. I turned 20 years old in the studio then. That was the first. I've been in other TV studios and stuff like that, but as far as recording, that was my first recording. And not in Los Angeles.
What was the emotion going through you?
Oh, it was a thrill. I mean, I was thrilled to be able to do that with those guys. I mean, what great players they were. And, well, Rodney's still doing it. He's going to play our festival this year. But yeah, it was great to be able to. I never played with a band like that before. All those, you know, I mean, living in Oklahoma and Kansas, I mean, there weren't that good of musicians around. But when they showed up there, that same day President Kennedy was killed, this is November 22nd, 1963. There was a show called Friday at 4 at the University of Oklahoma, and it was a folk music show. And I was on that, just happened to be on that show with some other folk musicians, but they were on the same show advertising the gig they were doing in Oklahoma City. And somebody told them they ought to hear me play, and then they didn't hear me play. I'd already done my part time they got there. So Doug Dillard said, "Hey, I want to hear you play when you get done here." So we ended up jamming together, and that's when we formed this kind of bond, you might say. And they said, we want you to record with us on our next album out in California. That following summer, we went out there and we did it. So, and then from there, Ralph Rensler did the liner notes for that. And Ralph Rensler was a mandolin player, folklorist from Massachusetts or New York or someplace, and he was on the folk music festival, Newport Folk Festival lineup, and he was and hired my dad and myself to come to the Newport Folk Festival in 1965, and that's where I met Bill Monroe.
Wow.
Also, Eck Robertson and then Arthur Smith were on that same show. He invited all those fiddlers too. But that's where I met Bill, and then when Bill asked me to join his band, which I did a couple of years later.
Now, for all the listeners out there, a lot of the people listening, they know that name, Bill Monroe, often called the father of bluegrass. Was it at all intimidating to meet the great Bill Monroe?
Yeah, sort of was. You know, I mean, I'd heard about him, heard him on the radio and stuff like that, and knew who he was, and of course, you know, and all these famous songs. And I knew some of them already, but it was just a thrill to get to meet him, and, you know, and then he asked me to play with him on his show. And Tex Logan and I and Gene Lowinger was the fiddler he had at the time. So, well, three of us got up there and played three fiddles on his part of the show at the Newport Folk Festival.
Wow.
But yeah, that was a great honor to be able to play with him, and then finally join his band, and that was a lot of fun too. And got to record three tunes, you know, Virginia Darling, Gold Rush, and Sally Gooden. So
this might be a tough one, but I was mentioning at the beginning all these different artists that you have recorded in the studio with, and I could have even gone further and, you know, John Denver, Elton John, Vince Gill, Tammy Wynette, Alabama. There's so many. Was there one that for you was the biggest thrill?
Well, again, it's you know, it was a thrill doing it with Bill Monroe, but I guess the Rolling Stones was the most interesting session I got to do.
Oh yeah,
yeah. They redid Honky Tonk Women and called it Country Honk. And Graham Parsons is the one that got me the gig. He told him to hire me to come in to play with them, and so I did. But they put me out on the sidewalk to do my part, and a little more ambience out there, I guess, you know. So that was pretty interesting to do that. So it kind of catapulted my recording success, I suppose you might want to call it, in Los Angeles. You know, doing that session didn't hurt any at all, for sure.
Well, there's something I wanted to touch on because the recording artist behind this album, Bob Dylan, he's going to be turning 80 in just a few weeks now.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, he'll be 80. But it's one of the more interesting, I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff in his catalog, but you appeared on the soundtrack album, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. Mm-hmm. Tell us about that experience.
Interesting story.
Let's hear it.
Interesting story. Yeah, I got a call. He had me come in to record for the movie Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. He was doing the music for it and stuff, and he's in it, I guess, too. But anyway, we had this instrumental called Turkey Chase. There was a turkey chase in a scene where they're running after these turkeys. And so there was an instrumental, and he had it. And Roger McGuinn was playing banjo, and Bruce Langhorne on guitar, and I know Bob Dylan was playing guitar. I don't know if we even had a bass. I don't think we had a bass player in my fiddle. And so we learned that, you know, and then we recut it. We recorded it. Then he asked me if I could sing. I said, well, yeah, I can sing. Everybody can sing. You know, depends on how good, you know. He said, well, just do background vocals for these other two gals up here. And it was Knocking on Heaven's Door. And so that was the hit off that. And I have another story about that. That was the big hit, you know, out of that session, was Knocking on Heaven's Door. Well, they used to put out 45 records back there. These young kids don't even know what that is. It's the little record with a big hole in the middle of it. And they played on jukeboxes a lot. He told me one time he was driving back to Los Angeles, stopped in New Mexico to get some gasoline, and he goes in to pay for it. And the guy in there recognized him. He said, oh, you're Bob Dylan, aren't you? And he says, yes, I am. So we play your record in here on this jukebox all the time. He said, that turkey chase is really great. That was on the backside of knocking on heaven's door. He thought that was funny. I did too.
How about that?
Yeah.
What do you make of Bob Dylan? How would you describe him?
Oh man, what a songwriter, you know, he turned out to be, and he was just I would say a pioneer of folk music almost, you know, really. A lot of big influence on a lot of people. He had all these songs and stuff. I mean, the Byrds, you know, did Mr. Tambourine Man, and a lot of the folk musicians did a lot of his songs, and from you name it. I mean, I'm sure the Beatles were influenced by him.
There's a place that people can go online, and the website is doublestop.com, the Double Stop Fiddle Shop, and that's Oklahoma's largest collection of violins and bows. I'm hoping you can tell us about the shop. When did you start that?
Well, I started collecting things in 1987. My dad did. He collected stuff, but when he passed away, he gave me 35 fiddles and a few guitars and whatever. But I didn't get the bug till 1987, and then got into it big time and started really collecting a lot of things. And then I moved to Guthrie, Oklahoma, where my wife's hometown is, and we had a house, and I bought a building here. And just 2 years ago, it burned to the ground with everything in it. And so I had to start over. And I'm in another building now, just across the street from the old one. And well, that was devastating to me. And it was, a lot of great instruments destroyed and collectible instruments and things like that. But now we still have a place to play and show instruments and jam, is what we do here. And I started a festival in 1997, which still goes today. It's called the Oklahoma's International Bluegrass Festival. We get groups from all over the world to come in and perform, and a lot, of course, of local bands. And like the Dillards are coming this year. My California reunion is coming again. Dan Craig, Steve Spurgeon, John Moore. They're going to come, and we're going to see if we can remember some of those tunes we used to do. And a lot of local groups and stuff. It'll be a fun time. That's always the first weekend of October.
First week of October.
Yeah, first Saturday of October. Yeah, we do it every year. Weather's pretty nice, and so it's kind of a nice time of year to have it.
Mm-hmm. You've done so many things from touring and performing in different places, but also recording with all these legendary musicians, making your own records. Is there something that you would like to attempt in music or not in music that you haven't yet?
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to think about that. I mean, I write tunes every day or so, and my latest CD is 63 original tunes on 3 CDs in one package. In fact, right before I called you, I was recording with a friend of mine in Nashville, Tim McDonald, great piano player. He's doing a bluegrass album with the piano.
Interesting.
And he's a really great player. Yeah. And so I was working on that, and I just enjoy recording with other people and doing what I can do. I mean, I've done symphonic bluegrass. Mason Williams did that. He wrote some charts out for Bluegrass Symphony, and we still do that once in a while. And so we get a good variety of, never boring around here.
Well, what inspires you with your own compositions? How do you get a tune started?
Oh, I sit and just work up, just get a little lick going, or get an idea, maybe just a little phrase or something I'll play, and then I'll just embellish that. Maybe it's a rhythmic thing I'll get into, and it's kind of a or whatever, and then I'll kind of put something to that. You never know. I'll wake up in the middle of the night thinking about a tune and try to remember it the next day, which very seldom happens, but I get all kinds of ideas all the time. Yeah.
Can you tell us your recollections of working with the late Doc Watson?
Yeah, I met him years ago, and we jammed some together here and there. And he asked me to record on one of his Red Rocking Chair album, I think it was called. we see each other at festivals and stuff, and just enjoyed each other's company. He was a great guy, and of course, great player. Everybody loved Doc. It was such a likable guy. Yeah, we miss him.
Can you tell us if there's anybody that you would like to work with, whether recording or performing or whatever?
Yeah, Dolly Parton.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, but I think she's one of the greatest entertainers that's ever been, almost, and I had a chance to record with her twice when I lived in L.A., 2 times, and I had already something previously booked, and I couldn't get out of it. But I never did get to, record with her or play some music with her, And Merle Haggard's another one. I knew him, but I didn't get to do anything with him.
You knew him, though?
Yeah, I met him. And he liked to fiddle. He was a fiddle player, too. Just thought about that, But I've been fortunate to be able to record with and be around with a lot of really great entertainers, and feel very fortunate to be able to know them.
Well, if Dolly Parton is listening, she knows to get in touch with Byron Berline.
Yeah, there you go.
What would you say is the best thing about being Byron Berline?
Oh, I don't know. Been real fortunate to be able to play with a lot of great players. And I surround myself with a lot of good players. So that's the whole secret of being successful. Be around, get as many players you can that know what they're doing on their instrument, and they'll drag you right along with them. Yeah.
Are you a man of faith?
Of course. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, it really tests you when a disaster like that with a fire happens. You really, it really is, and a lot of great things come from that spiritually, and who all your friends are and people that pray for you and stuff. But prayer is a big, important part of our lives. So it's a nice cure for anything.
What would you say that experience, which, you hate to hear about something like that, but would you say you learned something from that experience of that loss?
Oh, sure. How, you just can't take for granted. Personal things are important to a point, but they're, life and your friendship and just realizing the sanctity of life is more important than personal things. And just I was so amazed at all the people that reached out to us after the fire, and so it was very, very rewarding in that respect. That how many people wanted to do things for you, and very humbling and very very appreciative for that.
I know you're a man who knows so many tunes. Is it possible to pick the Byron Berline song, the tune that it's just your all-time favorite?
Sally Gooden.
Yeah?
Yeah. What
is it about that one?
I don't know. But it's what everybody tells me. Says you own that tune. So I'll take their word for it. But I enjoy playing that, and always have. I recorded with Bill a couple of times, or one time, and he helped me on an album, Fiddle and a Song. He and Earl Scruggs, got Earl Scruggs and Bill in the studio at the same time. 1994, that's the first time since the 1940s they've been in the studio together. And that was a thrill. But Sally Gooden, definitely, yeah.
Has there been a compliment that has meant the most to you?
Well, I see it on Facebook or here and there, that he's a very likable guy, and I want to be, so I hope I'm remembered that way.
Well, I remember talking one time to the late Paul English, Willie Nelson's drummer, and he was saying that if you have a great, great player that's not the greatest guy, or if you have a great guy who's not quite as good of a player, you want to hire the great guy every time.
Yeah, sure. I understand that. Yeah.
It's very important to be nice and also to have humility.
Sure.
Well,
yeah, that's for sure.
This might seem like a lighthearted question, but I think you can learn a lot about a person from it. What is your all-time favorite meal?
Meal?
Yeah.
Oh, it just kind of changes from time to time, you know. Growing up on a farm, you know, we raised beef cattle and stuff, so I like a really good steak, you know, and baked potato and green beans and stuff like that. But gosh, I like about everything, really.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Well, anybody out there who's tuned in, you can visit doublestop.com. That's the Double Stop Fiddle Shop. And I always like to give my guests the stage. And it's not limited to anything in particular. It's very open-ended. What would you say to the folks who are tuned in with us?
Well, you know, if you like bluegrass music, try to just get a variety of it and see, you know, what you like. Some people are very traditional, some others not so traditional, and you know, so. But like I say, any music that you want to buy or listen to, just have an open mind and listen to the artistry that comes out of there. And and if you want to see the history, there's a lot of books. I have a book out now. You know, it's a Fiddler's Diary. It's called. It's been out, I don't know, 10 years or so. Just, you know, with all the ways to search people out, you can just get online and find anything you can about anybody you want to. And so but I'd appreciate it if you wanted to contact me and talk to me, that'd be fine. Or if you want I got most of my CDs I can sell here at the shop, mail them to you, whatever. Same with the book. And then same with the lessons. I teach lessons on video. So that's available. How to play a fiddle tune or something, you know. So anyway,
great.
And then just come to our festival every year, and we're still doing live shows here at the music hall every other weekend, so all year round. So if you're ever through Guthrie, Oklahoma, just north of Oklahoma City, come by and see us.
I would love to see the place.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on.
Oh,
yeah.
My pleasure. If I could ask one question, one more.
Sure.
We have all these labels that we put on you that you're a fiddler and, you know, some people say legendary fiddle player, a recording artist, a performer, a teacher. Who would you say Byron Berline is at heart?
Fiddler. Yeah. That's what it says on my license plate.
Nice.
Fiddler.
Well, Mr. Berline, thank you so much for spending time with us.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah, thanks for letting me do it, and hope to see you all sometime.
All right. An honor to talk to you.
Thank you.
All right, until next time.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye.
Ba 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 da beep ba boo da boop da beep ba da leap ba knock da bees. I walk on teach a girl a get it. No, it's a go. Is it and gaga kiss a go. Oh, is it? I'm swagging. I believe it's a good. But don't talk about again. Goodbye.